So who do you think will take over the world? Is it going to be one world government? Or is it going to be radical Islam, militant Islam? Or is it going to be Google? Who will take over the world? Jesus says, the meek will inherit the earth. To many, the third beatitude is the most laughable beatitude. It's laughable that the meek are called blessed. And it's even more laughable that Jesus says that they are set for world domination. Back in the 80s, the rocker Frank Zappa lampooned this whole idea of the meek inheriting the earth with a song in 1981 entitled, "The Meek Shall Inherit Nothing." He says, some take the Bible for what it's worth when it says that the meek shall inherit the earth. Well, I heard that some sheik has bought New Jersey last week, and you suckers ain't getting nothing. Jesus' beatitude is a direct quotation from Psalm 37, verse 11, which reads, "But the meek will inherit the land and enjoy peace and prosperity." The Hebrew term that is translated here as meek is actually a synonym for the poor in spirit, a phrase that we encountered in the very first beatitude. But the term that is used in Matthew chapter 5 in the Greek language has a different nuance. It's actually the same term that is found in the Greek translation of the Old Testament. And Moses is described in Numbers 12 as being a very humble man, more humble than anyone else on the face of the earth. The word rendered humble by the Greek translation of the Old Testament in Numbers 12 is the same word used in Matthew 5, translated as meek. Maybe the easiest way to define the meaning of meek in this beatitude in Matthew is to look to Jesus himself. There's all sorts of dictionary definitions floating around about what meek means, and we may be susceptible to defining meek in the terms of our culture, in the terms of our society. And so it's really important to understand what it means from the lips of Jesus. Jesus, who says in Matthew chapter 11 that I am gentle. And that's the same word that's translated meek in the Beatitude. I am gentle and humble in heart. And he goes on to say, as he enters Jerusalem on a donkey, fulfilling that Old Testament prophecy from Zechariah of a meek king, he says, quoting Zechariah, "See, your king comes to you, gentle, meek, and riding on a donkey." Jesus is the embodiment of the meek king, and not just because he enters Jerusalem on a donkey. When Paul writes to the Christians in Philippi, he sets out this model of Jesus as the meek king when he talks about Christ humbling himself by making himself nothing, taking the very nature of a slave and becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Now, the term that the NIV, our English Bibles, translate in this Philippians passage as Jesus humbling himself isn't the same word that is translated as meek in the Beatitude. But it is the same word that is found a couple of other times in the Gospel of Matthew on the lips of Jesus himself, who talks about a non-exploitative, dependent life. And so he says, whoever takes the lowly position, the meek position of this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And for those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves, meek, will be exalted. And so from these uses of the term elsewhere, from the lips of Jesus, in Paul's description of Jesus, we learn that the meek in the Beatitude doesn't mean somebody who is insignificant, somebody who is a doormat compared to someone else. Rather, what we learn is that a meek person can be a person with great authority like Jesus, a person with great power like Jesus, but one who doesn't lord it over others. A meek person is, like Jesus, a servant rather than a despot. Meekness can kind of be defined in this way, maybe, when we think of Jesus. It's a humility that is expressed in kindness and gentleness. What's Jesus saying in this beatitude? He is saying that everything that you thought that you knew about power is wrong. In fact, we are wrong about the whole way in which we think that the world operates. Jesus here isn't giving us a lovely verse that needs to be cross-stitched and put on our wall. This is a word, actually, about cosmic upheaval. In this dog-eat-dog world, there's going to be one power that comes out on top. And at the end of all of history, emerging from the interplay of a million forces and vested interests, one group is going to emerge with absolute dominion: the meek. Do I have a hard time believing that? I sure do. And I think you probably will admit the same. And I have an even harder time living it, because I grasp and I take and I want to get on top. And basically, I just don't believe that the universe operates according to that principle. I can confess that Jesus is Lord of my heart, but do I really believe that he is Lord of the universe? And if I genuinely believe that Jesus is Lord of the universe, then I believe that the suffering servant is the creator of all things, that the suffering servant holds together everything by the power of his word. And if I really believe that Jesus is Lord of the universe, then I believe that the Lamb who was slain shapes and drives all reality. And if I really believe that, then history belongs to the one who describes himself in Matthew chapter 11 as being humble, meek in heart. When Jesus died on a cross under the feet of the brutal Roman Empire, it would have looked foolish to believe that the meek would inherit the earth. But then comes Resurrection Sunday, and history is made by the loser who died on the cross. The meek one is raised to life. History doesn't belong to the winners. It belongs to the loser. So how are we going to live? Are we going to live as though the powerful inherit the earth? Are we going to try to always get control? Are we going to take what we can out of life? Are we going to climb and grab and steal and get what we can out of today because Frank Zappa says the meek ain't getting nothing? Jesus' life, death, and resurrection testifies that the victory does not lie with the power hungry. In the end, the only ones who get anything are the meek, the whole earth, because the future belongs to Christ. Be on the winning side. Play on the winning team. Be meek. It's the power that runs the universe.